Welcome to the Osintracker tutorial video. Osintracker would like to thank the sponsors. Their generous contributions enabled the production of this video tutorial, as well as the publication of the manual. Osintracker would also like to thank all the users and the community for their support. Osintracker is the free, indispensable platform for all open-source investigators. This application redefines investigative work by offering instant access to a wide range of quality resources available on the internet, while enabling investigators to track the progress of their research, step by step. The continuous addition of new connectors makes information retrieval even more automated. But that's not all. With its interactive relational graph generated during data collection, Osintracker takes data representation and analysis to the next level for greater fluidity and productivity. Finally, local storage in the user's web browser ensures total data confidentiality. Osintracker uses a vocabulary that is essential to know. Data is information collected by the investigator, either manually or using a connector. An entity is the graphical representation of data on the relational graph, usually in the form of a circle and icon. A relationship is the link between two entities, represented as a line. It is used to explain why and how two entities are linked together. A resource is a website or a script that can be used by the investigator to gather information from data. A connector is a feature added to a resource, enabling the application to dynamically query this resource for data. The data returned by the resource is then automatically integrated into the investigation through the creation of entities. Finally, the source is the reference to the origin of the information collected, web address, for example. Local storage in the web browser ensures that data cannot be accessed by third parties. And even when the connectors call up third-party services, the application only communicates the data selected by the investigator to these companies. However, to guarantee data continuity, it is essential to use the application's manual backup functions, which allow you to download the global backup file to your computer, or the backup of a specific investigation. Two types of connector exist, the API connector and the JSON connector. Both types of connector work on the same principle. They automatically integrate the data found by a resource into the investigation. This saves investigators a considerable amount of time. An API connector dynamically queries the API of a website-type resource. Most API services, even free ones, require the user to use an API key. To use API connectors, you need to enter these API keys in the application parameters. Once this has been done, the corresponding resource is updated and the connector is fully usable. Some resources allow you to download the search results file. The investigator can then load this file into the investigation via a JSON connector. The application's general menu can be accessed from the button at the top right of the application. By clicking on Settings, the investigator can enter the API keys used by the various connectors. These keys are saved in the browser's local storage and can be modified at any time. Click on Export to download a file containing all the data added by the investigator to the application: investigations, resources, resource sets, and progress. This backup file can be imported at any time in the same browser, on another browser on the same computer, or even on another computer. Please note, importing a complete backup file will overwrite any data already present in the application. Help includes a link to the official online documentation, a reminder of keyboard shortcuts, and a button to open the type selector, which we'll look at later in this video. Other entries include contacts, credits, release notes, legal notices, and a button to change language. The Investigations tab displays the investigations present in the local database, as well as a menu for importing an investigation or creating a new one. To create an investigation, you need to enter its name. By default, the resource set used is the one integrated into the application. If another set exists, you can use the drop-down menu to change it. Once an investigation has been added, simply click on it to open it. The investigation screen is split in two. On the left, the relational graph, and on the right, an area displaying dynamic content adapted to the investigator's selection. With no entity or relationship selected, this panel displays the investigation panel, which we'll get to later. Now let's add our first entity. Two pieces of information are required. The value is the label displayed below the circle representing the entity. Some types of values, such as emails, are automatically detected. The type determines the design applied to the entity, as well as the resources offered to search for information based on the entity's value. An individual or a company is symbolized by a square, an event by a diamond, and all other types by a circle. Several options are available. The URL is the internet address that a click on the entity label opens. The country is the entity's nationality. To do this, enter the two-letter country code. The color of the entity is used to find your way around the graph, in particular with the help of a legend. The badge is an indicator offering different values. It is used as a reminder of the state of research on this entity. 3 entity sizes are available. The comment field is used to record additional information. The image field is used to upload an image to be displayed on the entity. Finally, a last option called critical indicates that this entity is particularly important for the investigation and is circled in red on the graph. Let's take John Smith, a fictional character, as an example. This entity is of type person, with the value John Smith, and is of British nationality. Clicking on the Add button, or pressing the Return key on the keyboard, validates the creation of the entity. The entity is selected, and its information displayed in the Entity panel on the right of the screen. To create a new entity, click on the Plus Entity button, or right-click on an empty area of the relational graph. Let's say we found John Smith's LinkedIn profile via the Google search engine. We add this entity of type LinkedIn, whose value is the name displayed on the LinkedIn profile, i.e. John Smith. Note that the application indicates that an entity with the same value already exists. Hovering the mouse cursor over this indicator brings up the name and type of entities already present and having the same value. The next step is to link these two entities together. To do this, activate the relationship creation mode by pressing the plus relationship button, or by using the keyboard shortcut Ctrl+R. The relationship creation mode is activated, as indicated by the color of the plus relationship button. To deactivate this mode, simply perform the reverse operation, plus entity button click or Ctrl+R. To create the relationship from the John Smith entity to the LinkedIn profile, left-click and hold on the starting entity, John Smith, then move the mouse cursor to the destination entity, and finally release the left click. Although no fields are mandatory, it is strongly recommended to fill in a minimum amount of information. Indeed, the aim is for the investigator to be able to quickly visualize why two entities are linked and how the information was found by indicating the source. Several fields are available. The label is the text that will be displayed on the relationship in the relational graph. It should be as explicit and short as possible. Some examples: belongs to, married to, met. The resource used, example, Google. The source, usually the exact URL of the web page where the information was found. In the case of John Smith's LinkedIn profile, we'll enter the exact URL of the Google search. Start and end times and dates. For example, the duration of the relationship between two people, the date of registration of a domain name. The comments field is used to enter additional information. Finally, some options can be activated. The color of the relationship line. Bidirectional, if the relationship is valid in both directions. The rating, usually used to express confidence in the link between two entities. This is a highly simplified version of the intelligence rating, used to assess the reliability and veracity of the information and the source. Critical indicates that the relationship is particularly critical to the investigation. Its thickness is therefore greater than the others. Clicking on the Add button, or pressing the Return key on the keyboard, validates the creation of the relationship. A left click selects it, displaying its information in the relationship panel on the right of the screen. For the purposes of this presentation, several entities and relationships are added to the investigation. John Smith has a previously identified LinkedIn account. On it, he states that he lives in London. We have also identified his website and domain name johnsmith.com. A look at the domain name's HOIS indicates that he has registered the domain name with the email joe@gmail.com since June 8, 2021. From this, we deduce the username Joe. Present on his website are a link to his Instagram account, a second email address, and his phone number. As this is a fictitious example for presentation purposes, the usual precautions, verifying and cross-checking information, have not been taken. Let's now select the joe@gmail entity of type email address. The entity panel appears on the right-hand side of the screen. It is composed of the entity's main information and 5 tabs. The Information tab contains the entity's previously listed information. As soon as an item of information is modified, the Cancel Modifications and Save buttons are displayed. The Resources tab presents the resources available for gathering additional information on the entity. The icon displayed for each resource has the following meaning. Website type resource. Script resource, often the repository address. Connectors implemented but not configured. Connectors implemented and configured. Clicking on a resource opens the corresponding website in a new tab. If one or more connectors have been implemented, then clicking on the resource opens a menu showing the different connectors. If the investigator is using a customized resource set for this investigation, then it is possible to create a new resource directly from this tab. This resource will then be added to the resource set used. The Incoming Relations tab shows inbound or parent entities. The Outgoing Relations tab presents outgoing entities or children. The Direct Children button selects all directly linked child entities, making it easier to perform multiple operations on them. The Comments tab allows the investigator to add additional information. Once a comment has been entered, a green dot is displayed on the tab. Let's now select the relationship linking John Smith to the johnsmith.com domain name. The Relationship panel appears on the right-hand side of the screen. It is made up of the relationship's main information and 2 tabs. The Information tab displays all previously listed relationship information. The Comments tab allows the investigator to add additional information. The main purpose of the investigation panel is to display all the entities on the graph, and to make it easier for the investigator to find specific entities. Several filters are available and can be combined. Color displays only entities of the selected color in the list. Families and types only display entities of the selected family or type. Search by value is possible. Entities in the list can also be sorted by value or criticality. Finally, the selection can be exported in CSV format. The Investigation menu button is located at the top right-hand corner of the investigation panel and provides access to several functions. This menu must be dissociated from the Application menu. Indeed, it only allows you to manage the open investigation. Application settings can be accessed here. Information includes investigation details, name, description, and the resource set used. Color labels are legends corresponding to the colors applied to entities by the investigator. Once a label has been entered, the legend is displayed at the bottom left of the graph. Using the duplicate entry, it is possible to create an exact copy of the investigation, including entities and relationships, parameters and progress. Please note that the copied elements will have no connection with the original elements. Understand that if you modify any data in the copy, you will not modify the original data. Clicking on the download entry downloads the source file of the investigation to your computer. This is the recommended solution for saving an investigation. Note that only data specific to the investigation, entities and relationships, is downloaded. The obfuscate entry allows you to permanently replace all identifiable content, text, images, of the investigation data with unrecognizable content. This can be useful for showing the complexity of an investigation without revealing the data. It is important to ensure that you have made a backup of the investigation before using this feature, otherwise access to the unencrypted data will be permanently lost. The download entry generates a report in HTML format and downloads it to the investigator's computer. This includes a list of data, with incoming and outgoing relationships for each, as well as comments. The import and download of entities and relationships will be covered in the advanced functions. The relational graph is the graphic representation of investigation data and the links between them. This is the core of the application, and it's from here that the investigator creates his or her investigation environment, enabling him or her to analyze the links and interactions between entities. There are several ways to interact with the graph. Holding down the left mouse button on an empty part of the graph and moving the mouse moves it. Hold the left mouse button over an entity and move the mouse to move it. Zoom in and out using the mouse wheel. Left-click on an entity or relationship to select it. Right-click on the chart background or press the plus entity button to create an entity. To create a relationship, first activate the relationship creation mode by pressing the plus relationship button, hold down the left mouse click on the starting entity, then drag the relationship to the destination entity. Finally, release the left mouse button. The investigator is free to arrange the entities on the graph as desired. Nevertheless, two visualization modes are integrated, mesh and tree, enabling automatic positioning to be applied to all entities present on the graph. These two modes can be applied using the buttons at the top left of the graph. Once applied, it is necessary to save the entity positions by pressing the Save button. Depending on the complexity and structure of the investigation, but also on the time available to the investigator, the latter may or may not prefer to use these automatic positioning algorithms. Right-clicking on an entity opens a context menu offering several actions on that entity. Duplicate the entity using the information from the entity to be duplicated. Delete the entity and any relationships linked to it. Apply a color. Apply a badge. Change entity size. There are two ways to select multiple entities and relationships. Hold down the Control key on the keyboard while selecting the desired elements. Hold down the Control key on the keyboard, then hold down the left mouse button and move the cursor to draw a selection window. All elements within this window are selected. If several elements are selected on the graph, the multi-selection panel appears on the right. The first Entities tab shows the selected entities, the second tab the relationships. It is then possible to apply the same operation to several elements of the same type, either entity or relationship. The menu at the top right of the multi-selection panel lets you delete all selected elements, entities and relations, only selected entities or only selected relations. Via the Entities tab, the type, nationality, color, badge and size of selected entities can be modified simultaneously. It is also possible to reorganize entities by activating the Reorganization button, then choosing the number of entities per line. The Relations tab lets you modify the label, color, note, resource used and source for selected relations. At any time, the investigator may need to check whether a data is present in his investigation. To do this, use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl+F to perform a quick search. A list of entities corresponding to the search is displayed, and clicking on an entity in the list selects it in the graph. The relational graph can be exported in JPG format by clicking on the Export button. The exported image will correspond exactly to the area displayed in the browser window. Two settings are available in the Export window. Export size modulates the pixel dimensions of the exported file on a scale of 1 to 10. It is recommended to remain reasonable in the choice of export size. Legends may or may not be added to the exported image. The investigator may sometimes wish to display his graph without revealing the information. To do this, they can temporarily hide badges, images, or labels. This will be taken into account when exporting the graph in JPG format. Shortcuts to improve investigator productivity. Ctrl+D to duplicate the selected entity. Ctrl+F to open the quick search. Ctrl+R activates or deactivates the relationship's creation mode. And finally, when a window is open, press the Escape key to cancel, and the Enter key to validate. The Resources page presents all the resources that can be used in the application, those integrated as standard, as well as those created manually or by multiple import. The menu bar lets you filter resources by family and type. It is also possible to display only generic resources, or not, or only resources embedded in the application, marked by the icon at bottom right. Note that only resources imported or created by the user can be modified. To open a resource, simply click on its card. This opens the resource editing window. The Add/Edit Resource window lets you configure the resource you wish to add or modify. The various parameters to be filled in are the name of the resource, its description, its URL, a website or, for example, a Git repository if it's a script, the complete URL for sending the value, generic if the resource applies to all types of entities, and the type of resource, script or website. If the resource is non-generic, then you must select in the right-hand part of the window to which entity types this resource applies. A resource set is a set of resources that can be used in an investigation. Every new investigation uses the default resource set provided by the application, but the investigator can create new ones. The advantage of resource sets is their ability to specialize the resources used in an investigation. It's not uncommon for the investigator to have to carry out investigations on people, companies, or organizations of different nationalities. This is where the use of a resource set comprising mainly only resources related to the country concerned will enable the investigator to be offered only useful resources. It is also possible to have several sets of resources adapted to the level of the user, particularly in the context of upgrading skills. To add a custom resource set, click on the Add button in the menu bar. The creation window appears, only the set name is mandatory. Once the creation has been validated, the user is redirected to the Resource Set Management page. The menu bar lets you filter resources by family and type. It is also possible to display only generic resources, or only resources embedded in the application, marked by the icon at bottom right. Then select the resources to be added to the set, and save by clicking on the Save button. As seen previously, each investigation can use a resource set added by the user. By default, an investigation uses the set provided by Osintracker. Go to the investigation parameters, then select the desired resource set from the drop-down menu. The resources proposed for each type of data are updated. If you like Osintracker and want to help out, there are several options. Entrust your missions to Mandora, the company developing the application. Sponsor the project with a donation. In all cases, don't hesitate to send us an email to discuss or suggest other ways of helping the project. Thank you in advance for your support, and see you soon.